Welcome to this afternoon's webinar. It's the first of the Doing Business in the USA webinar series presented by Stateside Solutions. Today's presentation will be presented by Mary Rogers, the CEO and founder of Stateside Solutions, and Tracy Monaghan, the Sales and Marketing Manager of Stateside Solutions. Stateside Solutions offers companies so and expanding into the US and support and the support they need when they're entering into such a tough market. I'll guess Mary will be able to give a better review of their company. Mary, get started. I'll just pass over presenter right to you now. Fire ahead. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. Sorry, apologies. Okay. So thanks everybody for joining us. As I mentioned, my name is Mary Rogers. I'm the CEO of Stateside, and Stateside was set up in 2007 to help U companies going into the US market. I lived in the US for 15 years, worked in corporate America, saw an opportunity, came back to Ireland and set it up, and now spend time between Ireland and the US. We have a team in New York at 345 Park and Galway, Ireland. The Galway work on lead generation and strategy for clients. The US team work on the contract sales and implementing the sales plans. So core support, contract sales, exec search for key hires, logistics, which is office setup and getting phones and organizing operationally, doing business with brokers and insurance and so on, and setting up advisory panels to help companies keep the advice they need to scale in the US. Today, the webinar will cover three areas. We're going to cover research and planning in the US market, an approach to the US market entry, which I think is key for everyone on the call today. I'll demonstrate this by using case studies, clients we've worked with, what's worked, what hasn't worked for them, and that will give you some guidance into the US market. If you have questions, I believe you can type them in, and we'll take them at the end of the presentation. Thanks. So start off with, I guess, just to retouch base on the US. So a lot of you will know already, a population of over 313 million, fourth largest country in the world. It has 50 states, which for you might mean 50 markets, because each state has its own state government and local laws and local taxes and local regulations and compliance issues. We have in the US there's an upcoming presidential election. Romney is up against President Obama, and it's a high contested election. Obama is in the lead, but it's definitely not a home run. It's going to be challenging, and whoever wins that election will determine budgets and policies for the government, which will directly affect you, your product, your service, and your industry. It's important that you keep an eye on how things are progressing on the front, and because you know what the experts are saying, what the bloggers are saying, because it could be advantageous. Budgets might free up. I mean, if you're in the health industry, for example, you might see Obama putting a legislation through on healthy eating and so on, or preservatives, or whatever it is that might give you an opportunity, or the energy sector. So keep an eye out for that. It's quite easy to look at these things through a quick glance at Huffington Post or the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. The main pages, just glance at them, get into the habit of doing that once a week. It'll keep you fully apprised. The employment rate in the US right now is 8.2%. So that's 8.2% of people I've registered for 4 weeks who are willing to work. That's quite high, which is good news, I guess, if you are looking to hire. Some markets are more heavily saturated than others, and we'll talk about that. But overall, I will tell you that the US is open for business. Large corporations absolutely work with small companies. That old saying of "you get fired for buying IBM" is no longer applicable. A large US financial service companies, often from small companies, what they look for is quality at a fair price. So you don't have to be the cheapest, but you do have to have quality and deliver accordingly. Okay. as just again, just on the market overview, just to understand that there are different time zones, and why that matters is not so much that we care that it's 6 o'clock California right now. Thirdly, what it matters is that from doing a business perspective, you need to take that into consideration from lots of reasons. You need to take it into consideration for flying and the time involved. You need to take it into consideration on your support for your services that you provide to the US, who's available to answer your phone, taking the time zones into consideration. And flying to New York versus flying to LA, that's double the time. So, and our Atlanta. So you want to, when you do go to set up in the US, you ensure that you set up near a hub, at least near an airport hub, so that it's easy to get in of and out of. Or if you're going with distributors, are you near the coast so that shipments can come in through Toronto and through the East Coast? So we'll talk a little bit about those things today as well to help you out, but just some general facts to be aware of. To sell in the US market, I assume the fact that you're on this call means you're at least considered, and that's great. We recently had a client who said we plan to conquer the US market by 2015. It was optimistic. So our advice there is blanket statements just don't work, because reality is you're going to conquer the US market by 2015. You might conquer a segment of it, a geographical area or a sector, but the purpose of today is just to get you to kind of be specific and put goals in place that's achievable. And so nobody's disappointed, because Stateside didn't make $2 billion in the first year either. So you be ambitious, but you have to be realistic. We're smart goals for business to run this presentation, just to help everybody to focus and to understand the deliverables. But before you enter the US market, the first thing you need to do is to develop your strategy and define your specific goals. What do you want from the US, and what do you expect them to achieve? That, I guess, is the market assessment, right? So it's identifying the need for your product or service and to understand what is your selling point. Why do people want to buy your product or service? And who are your customers? So, Silicon Valley might appear very attractive for a technology company, but the reality is their customers might be in the middle of America or on the East Coast, and so do you need to be there? So we're trying practical solutions to the need for sales. So you're trying to figure out, can I service, software be sold from Nebraska? Find the staff that I need there. Where are my customers? How easy would it be to commute to those people and deliver? The whole living and mileage is not really used in the States. You'll tend to fly to a destination and then rent a car from there to get to your client. Pricing and can you compete on price will be key, because your competitors are charging, and they'll already be at an advantage because they're established in the market and they've already established their pricing. So a bit of taking a step back, look at your current pricing, see how it translates, and making sure that it does take into consideration your margins. And from retail or from selling products into even hardware stores, the consideration is the logistics of shipping and customs and transport. For SaaS product, we're talking about the cost of hosting your technology on the cloud. All of those things need to be taken into consideration for transfer pricing. Physical distribution, like where your sales agents, distributors, or your direct sales team located. Touch briefly on this international selling point. We call it, in an indigenous market, your unique selling point, like what's special about you. But first you need to look at that, aggressively figure out what's your international selling point. Why in the US would they want a product? And some examples of this would be that company who make handset, which is the thing that pricks your finger if you're a diabetic. And it's all about price, of course, and it still is in the US, but more importantly, and the reason that they sold and now in hospitals such as in New York and in Boston and children's hospitals and so on, is because of the quality of care. It's because of pain. So the hospital pitched to their patients that they were using till it was painful. And so the selling point was the USP for the US. it was that the quality of care was better for patients. And especially in the US healthcare market, hospitals and doctors are competing against each other. It's pretty cutthroat, and you have a choice of where to go and where to receive procedures and so on. Another example, just on the health IT side, was that a vetting software would have been focused on all of the different features of the product, and you can do all these wonderful things, and you can multitask, and the doctor says, yes, we don't care, we only care about getting paid from the insurance company, show that feature. And it was excellent, and that became the unique selling point. So you really need to have someone local in the market, look at the product, and tell you what they feel is the strongest features and benefits of the product. Review, which is again as a part of your strategy before you go in, you're going to look at where your competitors are located, pricing model, and their techniques for sale and how they approach their clients. So the question, can this be done often? Often it can. So that's great if you can approach sales through e-commerce, through sales from your website. I'll look a little later on about using resellers and distributors and all the different opportunities you have to sell. Again, we talked a little bit about pricing and you know where your competitors are and why they're located there, and to figure that out. Advice on achieving the strategy and the specific goals would be, first of all, everyone should use the available free resources. So what that means is that if you're a UK company, UKI likely have a library of resources for you. The trade agencies are excellent, and they've done a whole host of research already on industry statistics, number of companies, on trends. You know, use this to go to those libraries and get the knowledge that's already been gathered and use that. Speak to companies who've already sold in the US. You find that the most sharing companies will be those who are successful already, and they'll be happy to what worked for them and what didn't work for them, and that will save you a lot of time and money. Familiar with local industry experts and read their blogs, and it kind of goes back to the election point, which is just that social going anywhere. So find out who the experts are in your industry, read what they've got to say about trends, and leverage that, because you can add value. Perhaps you can initiate a conversation about your technology or your product or testimonials or something that will make you stand out. So in that process, and that's, you know, to write and post it is pretty much free by setup, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And go to a trade show without necessarily having a booth. So you don't have to go and pitch, but you need to go and learn. How you do that is you go with a review, and you might go and visit all of your competitors, gather their marketing materials, speak the information, and then use that to strategically form your sales and marketing plan for the US. You're familiar with Kinsley Aikens, who very pushes the whole diaspora model, and he said something interesting recently. He said he always believes that Ireland should use the case model. This applies to any country, which is, you know, copy and steal everything. So you go to trade shows, you brochures, you see what language they're using, use it in your brochures. You can use the setup of their stands, and just help you put some cost analysis behind it. So before investing in a booth, an trade show, I recommend that you first go and visit and learn. It's like a market study visit. And of a local trade board, I know that they'd be happy to assist you with setting those things up. Experts, and we'll talk about this a little later on, but not only companies who've sold in the industry, but industry experts, perhaps as somebody who's had several products at Home Depot, or somebody who's sold products into financial services. So speak to them and figure out what they can tell you before you spend. I also recommend that in the process as possible that you speak to a lawyer, and again, US lawyers will speak to you for free for the initial conversation, because they all are interested in the long-term relationship. You really just need a brief call to understand how long it takes to set up an entity, what would be the best advice. But when you get into, you know, creating a track that you're going to use as a template, that's a different type of engagement. But the initial conversation about, what should I set up, or how about visas? So we know that you need to have your leave entry needs to be set up for at least 6 months before you're in the process for an L1 visa, for example. So steps will save time. If there's any Enterprise Ireland clients on the line, I know there's a resource called Tech Resources that also gives you a list of service providers that you can look at. So, determine success for you. What are the measurable and achievable that you need? Well, most important here is that you need a clear plan of action and to allocate the appropriate financial and support resources to implement the plan. And what this really means, and I'm most reluctant to say this because it turns people off, but the reality is you go into the US market unless you have 100K to spend. Your first sales will be loss leaders. You're going to spend money before you make money. Travel alone and the marketing materials and all the different bits that go with it will up. So as the companies prepare that, so said, use the free resources first, and then in your budgeting, just be there to spend. And the opportunity will outweigh the cost, but you should be aware of that. Milestones for yourself that track your progress. So you don't want to do is to go into the US and 2 years later to be, to that you spent 100K and nothing's been achieved. So what be specific, know what you're going after, and then set deliverables. It's very important that everybody on your team is aware of what your goals are. So it's not that the board of directors have a private meeting and make a US plan and they don't share it with the team. Everyone needs to be on board. Everyone needs to be looking for opportunities and connections and engaging in the process. So advice there is that you need to use a CRM. So whether that's Salesforce or CRM, or locally in Ireland, a lot of people use one-page CRM. Whatever it is, you need to be using a CRM, and everybody on the team needs to know log in, how to run reports, and how to assess them. So the point in sales teams putting in pages and pages of sales reports and data and information on clients if the technology team aren't checking that so they can deliver. So everybody needs to be engaged in the process. Be accountable to presenting your brand, be it a salesperson or a distributor. Maybe they know that they're responsible for it. And if they're not delivering, a conversation as to why. Not because you're them or it's a performance review. It's more about maybe there's something wrong in the process. Maybe we're targeting the wrong customers. So constant flow of conversation between the HQ and the local team on the ground. We recommend that you form an advisory panel that will help you assess the strategy. So it's not a simple solution for companies going into the US first. So when you develop your strategy and you find your UA and you're ready to go, it's no harm to get 4 to 6 experts in a room who present to. And people would be both thought and industry experts and maybe previous sales experience. You base, and then they give you feedback on what will work and what won't work, and give you advice, tips. Get out of that meeting is a lot of solutions, and also a whole Rolodex of contacts, because these will become advocates, become promoters of your company. I have to say, Stateside recently had an advisory board for a client back in Ireland, and I spoke to them the other day. I'm like, well, were you happy with everything? And they said, yes, I got reports from that guy. So they're still engaged. They're still sending on information because they're going to be part of something. It's really a good time to kind of engage them early on and bring them through the process. They look for like a consultancy rate for this. They're really engaged because they're interested. So I guess that's what Stateside does. We put these panels together, and then depending on the client, we'll go and seek out the best people and form the team that will engage with you. Understand the costs involved in sales and expansion. We talked a little bit about that, but that's just understanding the costs involved in the marketing material, or if you're selling in New York and you want to sell in Boston, what are the additional costs there? Be prepared to compromise. So it's very in the US, and it's all about relationships. So you need to be prepared for prepared to figure out in what to give up. So whether that's to put someone and you give up a little equity, or to partner with someone and you land up white labeling your product, or perhaps somebody will sell it under their brand, or whatever it is. So understand what your relations are, what a deal breaker. But be realistic, because you might have something in order to gain an awful lot of opportunity. You know, we'll talk implementation in a minute, but your sales plan is to be very specific. So it's not even one sector at a time. It's one sector and one geographic area at a time, because your sales marketing plan for the sectors and geographical areas might be completely different. Timelines matter if we go back to SMART goals, because from a legal and compliance perspective, filing patents or getting certification, whether it's Sarbanes-Oxley or FDA or whatever the requirements are from the compliance side, you need to instigate those things early. So no point in going to market and then investigating them. You'll have lost crucial time. From the marketing, you need to have timelines in place so that you can assess and decide if this is sustainable and scalable, if it's actually going to work for you. From this perspective, we know the entity needs to be set up in advance so that some of the visas can be accessed. From bringing employees over to the US from other countries, for certain visas, they need to have been employees for 12 months prior to going to the US to start up a business. Investment visas like e-visas, there's certain requirements on the investment side as well. So you need to look at these timelines early on and put that in place, because you won't be able to do it all in one go. I talked about the USP earlier, and the ISP, that whole being prepared to pivot is important, which is where you can market and you think your product is wow because of a feature, and then your customers there tell you it's wow because of some other feature that you haven't even focused on. So I guess you just have to be open-minded and be prepared to pivot. And market conditions, like we said, the action will have a direct effect on budgets. And in New York, Mayor Bloomberg is a strategy to eliminate quotas that are over 16 ounces. So there's basically it's going to be called. I'm saying that in the US that it's important to keep apprised of what's happening on the legal side. Mayor Bloomberg in New York is pushing through what he's calling the sugar law, which is preventing restaurants from selling sodas that are larger than 16 ounces. And that's obviously going to have a direct effect on a number of industries and markets. So it's important for companies to watch what's happening in their sector and, keeping the economic conditions of the US are very focused on what's happening with the euro. It would not be unusual for a customer to ask you, from you, Europe's in a mess or whatever it is. And so you just need to, the solution to that problem is just to be forthcoming. We're funded, we have, we're through 2016, we have, private equity, just something to give them a sense of security that you're not going to be gone next summer. So strategy in place, the next part is really implementing and defining your route to market and where you're going to somebody to sell your product, whether to look at M&A, which might be further down the line, what a company you're going to form, setting up your office and then hiring if that's what you want to do. I guess things here is that there could be several routes to market, right? So clients and financial services software clients in the past who used their beachhead. So that's a direct sales work. A direct sales team on the ground, reach and frequency, going to visit service houses, and so then rolled it out through resellers throughout the rest of the country. So that's a much greater access to different clients throughout the US, but it helped them to maintain control on the development side and to understand their clients' needs by keeping New York as their beachhead and their key point of entry. Formation, and the lawyer will help you with this, is just deciding what do I need. Is it a subsidiary? Is it a completely separate company? Is it, the most tax-friendly set up? And it really depends on what your product or service is and how to take questions after on that. Setting up your office, you can do your office relatively in the US. You get an 800 number, $40 a month. Going to go the virtual office route, my only recommendation is that you avoid the Reguses of the road, which is the standard virtual. So everyone knows the Regus addresses. If you Google them, they come up really quick, and people know that you're not really on the ground. So I think you go with the smaller Asian spaces. There are hundreds of them. On this coast, a lot of law offices are renting out space and virtual office space because they downsized during the recession. So now I've got a lot of in-law offices empty, and quite happy to rent those to you. You have their address and their floor and everything, but it could be a cubby hole, and that's perfect because it gives you the on-the-ground address. The tip on that, I guess, is that if you're running, go into a mobile phone shop or a cell phone shop like T-Mobile, AT&T, or you will be able to get a US cell phone that starts 212, which would be it's a Manhattan landline number, quite hard to get even for landlines. But these stores do have a number of them they give out each day, very early in the morning. But it's a great way. It gives you a great basis for your business because you'll automatically assume that you have an office in Manhattan if you've got a 212 number. And staffing, we'll go through in a sec on the different types of hires, but it's really, again, it'll go back to budget, because whoever you hire, if you hire direct, you understand that the base salary, you need to another 30% on top of that in order to bring that person on board, because US medical benefits are standard, taxes and compliance issues and so on. So basically, if you see a position advertised for 4,000, you just need in your head to add another 30% on top of that. Marketing, which is key, obviously, that's what we all want to do, is get sales and get our product out. So we said the key thing is the different types. What's the best avenue for you? Direct, contract, distributors, or an agent? Who's representing your brand? We have Tracy on, and an on-the-ground sales and marketing manager for Stateside in New York, and she sent a number of clients. I thought it might be valuable for Tracy to just, from a practical level, just give something how she felt like on the cold calling and knocking on doors and how she was received and whether it was effective. Tracy?
Mary?
Yes.
So as Mary said, I'm based in New York, and I work with a range of our clients in the sales function. And the comparisons between Ireland and the US, really markets are quite different over here. Mary said, what you think is your USP home might be quite different when you come to the US. The US, especially in New York, it's quite a dynamic marketplace, and there's tons more competition when you come to the US. It's not, maybe it's 3 or 4 competitors at home, whereas over here you might have 33 or even 300. So they push the marketplace. You always have to be on your game, and the professional touch is needed, especially when you're an unknown brand and you first approach the marketplace. It's all about building relationships with key potential clients that you want to try and sell into. With the VIP touch that you have to give them for the first, to get the initial sales over the line. So, it may need extra, sales meetings with each of the clients, or maybe they request, your product. It's just the touches that really build that relationship. And then once you have your 2 or 3 sales over the line, you can use them as reference sites or reference points. And then you'll see that, the referrals will start coming through, word of mouth will start to build. And from there, it's a case of the multiplier effect. So once you have your 2 or 3 sales built, you'll see that more and more sales will generate, and your brand will increase recognition. So that's kind of, over here to build strong relationships in the very beginning. And it will be worth, you know, worth that extra time in the long run. So that's kind of the key points that I found is really it's a relationship building process over here more so than just, you know, wholesale.
Perfect, Tracy. Thanks. And that's exactly right. So the key, I guess, for everybody on the call is that in the US, it's all about relationships. Introductions to decision makers will come through relationships. Often your first reference site will be the result of a relationship where somebody makes an introduction into the relevant industry or corporate sector. Americans are doing business, they're proactive, and they expect you as a vendor engaged, and if you are engaged, they will absolutely promote you and deliver for you. But it's a relationship thing, and it's the reach and frequency, and it's available for meetings or the key, and we'll talk about that in the practical steps later. So to recap on the reference side, I guess, it's just to make sure that your reference site is relevant to your market. So it's not efficient, I guess, to get a sale into, you know, a office with software or to a very small business that you can't reference, because the relationship is what's going to deliver more sales. So you want that reference site to make a difference so that you can test your implementation plan. Or it's like, again, back to the hardware. I mean, if you're selling hardware, the rate needs to be Home Depot, not Sam's Corner hardware shop. You can then assess how products need to be sold and margins are, and get on to what your break-even point will be. What's important after the reference site, though, is to ensure that you have the resources to deliver the service. And that's a key issue. And we've had that challenge with a client who was fortunate enough to get into a large retail outlet who expected delivery within 6 weeks. Six were that a company from mainland Europe, but the logistics were they didn't have the resource base to ship that product on time, to get through customs, to get it through warehousing system and delivery. They were still investigating that. So really that kind of homework should have been done before they pitched to the large corporate. Because the direct result, they lost the contract ability. So they've now eliminated that retailer from their list. You know, with enough lesson learned, but fortunately it's a great product. So I have no doubt it will make it into other retail outlets. But it's just something to be aware of, that to make sure that you always can back up what you say in a meeting, and that you do have the support the legal support to deliver on the product or service. But even we're support teams as well answering the phone. First reference site will be a loss leader, so it will cost you money, and it's frustrating initially to see that took you 2 meetings or 1 month or whatever the sales cycle might be. But the reality is that reference will be a multiplier, and that's what counts. Just to talk then about what is the break-even point. So for you and me, and what's important to us is when sales are greater than your costs, right, and you have your net profit. And this is considered on the US cost side. So what costs me money, we're going to bring in the money, and that's the sale of your product. And then what do you essentially need to set up in the US? So you will absolutely need to speak to a lawyer at some point. You have that US bank account to accept money and to pay bills, to pay staff if that's the way to go, or to accept royalties or whatever it is. You need some sort of virtual office. US web page, it's absolutely not acceptable to not have one. Attend your site, not to engage on the social media side. It's essential. Social media is not going anywhere. What are the costs? And a reseller will take typically 40% margin. So you need to understand, the costs involved, and then are you getting enough margin for yourselves to execute that? I guess the sample we have here is that we had a very successful client who was doing very well in Europe, and we're presented with an opportunity for a financial services software on the west coast of the US. And, had their insight, did very well, another opportunity on the west coast. But the challenge was resources. So they're really successful in Europe. They have an opportunity in Canada, and now they have this opportunity waiting to happen in the US. But the risk and the cost for the US will be substantial. And so going through that process now of the sustainable versus scalable, because they don't really want 10 sales in the US. That's going to be sufficient to justify the cost involved in the next 24 months. So they're back and really assessing the cost to understand, is the right market, or do they put it on hold until 2014 and concentrate on the easier sales, maybe places they've already proven themselves. So always, sometimes you've got to figure out what will work and what won't. So this is probably part of the webinar, I hope, which is what you guys need, what are the practical tips for entering the US market, like what will make a difference to you today. So we some of these, I see it's 10 past, so just for very quickly for like 5 to 7 minutes, is that being proactive. So understand the US business culture, and also the next point of being responsive. You have to respond to an email within 24 hours, and if you don't have the answer, that's okay, but you need to say, I'm looking at it and I will be in touch. Answer the phone. It's really that there is someone on the end picking it up. If you consistently get voicemail or through and nobody answers the phone, it's very frustrating and they will walk away. Yes, the point for all of us who might be based in Europe is that there is no real summer holiday block in the US. Like companies don't for Galway's race week, or don't like turn off for the month of August. Typically, the standard vacation for employees in the US is between 10 and 20 days total, which is 4 weeks maximum vacation, and that's at the highest level. There are 9 public holidays that people don't take depending on culture and religion and so on. But it's basically open for business 365 days of the year. You need to adequately support that opportunity. You need to adequately resource your US expansion, your staff, and your messaging. Make sure that they're on message. Make sure that the receptionist who's based in Liverpool knows what's happening in the US, so they don't get a surprise that the phone rings at 6:15 and they don't answer it. Everyone should be aware of what's happening in the US and be able to articulate that. Social media is a great resource, as we know, and it's a real opportunity to promote your product or service by engaging experts, engaging discussions on LinkedIn. It's a really cost-effective way to get your message out. I understand that it's nobody can afford, a full-time, media person, but outsourcing it or thinking about having someone 2 days a month or plan in place, but you definitely can't ignore it. It's growing, and your people will look to check. They look for the icons. See, are they on LinkedIn? They might follow them on Twitter, but they want to understand that you know what's happening in the market. Be realistic about your expectations, which is what we talked about, which is understand what's realistic for you to achieve in the next 12 to 24 months, and then what are your long-term plans. You need to have a customized US sales and marketing strategy, and it might even need to be sector specific or geographical area specific. So don't one does not one fit for all of the markets. You're in the Americanized, and in fact, using English or Irish English is just not acceptable. Know what your unique point is in the US, and like you said, I might find out that that's slightly different than anticipated. And back to being adequate fund marketing and sales activity, leads no sales, and that's right back to the basics of lead generation and setting up sales meetings and the whole cold call canvas sales meeting process. No, there's no easy solution. There's no magic pill. But like I said, those first sales will multiply for you, and then that will become easier. On talent, going directly and hiring someone yourself, or you go through an agency, that you're engaged in the process. So from the job description to the onboarding of the new hire. Americans are excellent salespeople, and they can do very well in an interview, but I guess our methodology is that we then reach out to not only the references, but clients they've sold into. And we clients and we say, do you think Mary is a good fit for this company? And unfortunately hear that no, she's not. She's great as part of a team, or to achieve goals, but she doesn't push past them. you need to ask the hard questions and have these off-the-record conversations, because you know that hires are make or break for a company, and we understand the cost involved. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you take the best person on paper or the expensive person, or you really need the reference checking is key to hiring the right person on the ground. Accessible and be available. It's very important to be available to meet potential clients when a meeting opportunity presents itself. And you like through relationships and contacts. And again, the trade boards are excellent for this. They will often have networking events where they present and will give you an opportunity to meet with a whole host of industry leaders. At that meeting, through a casual evening coffee, glass of wine, there might be an opportunity for a follow-up business meeting. So it's key that somebody is available to do that. And they're not interested in hearing that you can't make it for 3 weeks because your B visa is expired, or you know your 90-day welcome or whatever it is. So you need to have a plan for that. And be available. What to end on was the fact that relationships are key. Relationships. Like, it's amazing the number of clients that we've worked with that have been able to set a large corporations, both in financial services and healthcare and hardware, because somebody has said, let me take a look at that company, let me hear their story. It's the preparedness. Once the company's prepared, they have logistics in place, they know what their value proposition is, and their pricing is done, then thing can be very effective. I guess my advice to everybody in preparation for going to the US is do your work, use available free resources first. Use it, see what's available, put it together, put a strategy together, and then test it. So under your first reference site will be a test, and the multiplier effect will deliver the sale. We have 2 webinars coming up, one on next Thursday, the 2nd of August. We will go into more detail on sales cycles and expectations around that. And finally, we'll focus in on the technology industry for our 3rd webinar. I'll take any questions, as is Tracy. You can reach us anytime via email or on our line, which we will pick up. Thank you. Laura, to you.
Thanks, Lee. If anyone has any questions, they can type them into the box on the side there. We'll gladly read them out to Mary and Tracy. There's one question here, which might be, there's 2 questions here, actually, they're coming in, people. So William White asked earlier, how would you rate shipping from Ireland to the US, and do you have a recommendation for reliable couriers, or is this an area that you guys have any expertise in?
Absolutely. So you can, I don't know, did you say rate shipping, or how do you get shipping rates, is it?
How we rate shipping from Ireland to the US in general, I think.
No, so it works effectively, and yes, we work with a number of logistic providers, particularly on the East Coast, who bring products through Toronto, house them in Rhode Island, and then have the logistical supports in place to get that product kind of nationwide. But because these particular providers might house many different companies, it makes it much more cost effective for small companies. What the fee are for those guys is that they'll take like a retainer fee to manage the stock, and they will look for a slight commission on the sales. But they handle everything on the logistical support. I'm happy to talk to Michael, and he can email me, and I can follow up on that.
Great. And on your side, one more here, is it realistic to send a single person to the US with responsibility for selling a technology product, particularly if that business is touching the entire US as opposed to city or a state?
It's realistic to send a single person to the US, and so you have a couple of choices there. So you can strategically send your key person from wherever your home country is. If that person has US experience and understands the US market and the relationships and all of that, and then from there they can hire locally to support them. So it is important. 2 things are important. One is that the person has local knowledge of how things work. 2, that person has the knowledge about your technology, right? local US person to match your technology sales is they don't understand the ethos of the company, or where, you know, you really need to train them up. But if you bring one over, provide experience and understanding of the US market already, and maybe spend some time there, then they can be the supporters of that. So is the answer, I guess. Realistically, one person is enough. They're brave enough to start it off, to get that reference site and start engaging with resellers so you can roll it out nationally, but not a long-term solution, no. And supports, you'll find that the key person on technology sales will be doing much bigger things like the agreements or larger enterprise sales. And so it's not possible for them to also create sales and marketing materials or also get that first reference site. There's too much work involved, so I guess no is the answer.
Okay, I'm just looking to see. I don't know if there's any more questions coming. Are any coming to you guys?
Let's see. I had one question that came earlier and came the other day as well, which somebody was receiving royalties. They were saying, do they have to declare them with the US tax system? And the answer is yes. You pay a lot of tax on them, but you do need to speak to someone and declare that revenue, because if you expand, the IRS will take a very dim view on the fact you didn't. You don't want to start off by being in an audit mode. So only royalties coming in, take a look at where they're coming from, and I engage an accountant or a lawyer and pay whatever is due.
Okay.
Somebody's asking here, sorry, do I have a list of trade board meetings, or would they? Oh yeah. So on the trade board meetings, or do we need to contact them directly? So depending on where you're based, your HQ is. I know Enterprise Ireland and UKTI and InvestNI and several other trade agencies in Canada also will have networking events in different host cities, be that New York or Boston or San Francisco. They often, Enterprise will put out a calendar of events to let you know what's upcoming, or contact their local office to say what events do you have in November. November in New York is a lot of dinner dances, or I guess functions will happen, supporting local charities, so it's an opportunity to network, as is obviously the St. Patrick's Day opportunity is huge for our companies in the US. The Youth Jubilee has provided a host of networking opportunities in New York, very effective, getting large corporates to meet with small companies, sharing knowledge and experience. But the best thing really is to look at the local offices and look at local LinkedIn, look at networking groups, the business networks, IIBN for the Irish people, our companies. I think there's an IIBN in the UK. There's also lots of UK networking groups as well. So LinkedIn is a good resource for that, any of the expat groups, and drill it down to finding your local trade board in the relevant host city. With regard to trade visas, the E1 visas from getting visas, going to US, they are coming through. I've actually heard of 2 companies who've got ones in the past 2 months. But there was a challenging time there this year, where I believe might have been just a changing of the guard at the embassy with backlog, and then some vacation needed to be taken and so on. But I think it's back on track, and visas are being processed. I would to allow 3 months. It could be a little longer for our processing side.
Great. I think that seems to be it. So if you want to wrap up, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys next week, the same time next week, for the next webinar in the series. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks for your time.